And Tina, welcome to the podcast. Girls, we have a lot to talk about. But before we get started, can you guys give a quick intro into who you are, what you're about, and why right now is very important for us to be having this conversation?
Yes. So I'm Anna. Thanks for having us, Blake. Really, really keen to have this conversation. It's a great timing for it. So I'm an Australian with Iranian background, and what I've been doing recently is getting involved locally with the recent woman-led movement in Iran, what some are calling a revolution now, because it's now in its seventh week, where the people of Iran, led by women, are uprising against the government. I was born in Iran, but I grew up in Australia. We moved over here when I was 7 months old. We moved in the middle of the Iran-Iraq war. Obviously, it was a troubling time then, and it's still a troubling time now. Things haven't improved very much for the people of Iran, and that guilt weighs on me. I was one of the lucky ones that was able to leave, and I still have a lot of my family and friends still living in Iran under this brutal regime. And so with that, and with my keen interest in humanity, I'm doing what I can to elevate their voice, because at the moment they're being suppressed by the government. That's me.
Beautiful. And Tina?
Yeah, again, thanks, Blake, for having us. Just to add to what Anna was saying, because everything she said is, accurate. I myself, I am a Kurdish Iranian. I was born in Iran, and we moved over as refugees to Australia when I was 5 years old. I have a very close tie politically with what's going on in Iran, as my whole family has been political within generations, and I myself represent, I think, all the minorities. I was going through the checklist today, and my mum was Baha'i, my dad is Kurdish. We have political members on the socialist side within my family. I myself, I'm a female. And so I personally believe that I need to do as much as possible within the comfort of Sydney, Australia. And if there's any reason why, just going through those checklists of minorities would, answer to that question. I feel that no matter where we are geographically located, we all have a responsibility when it comes to causes which concern human rights and the minorities themselves.
Thanks for the intro, girls. So how would you guys best describe what's going on at the moment, and as kind of Anna said, the last 7 weeks? And the reason I want you to answer what appears to be a simple question is because what we're getting fed and what's actually going on, there may be a bit of a difference between those two. So how would you describe what's going on at the moment and potentially where things are at, in terms of what's unfolded over the last 7 weeks?
Yeah, so good question. I guess I'll summarize how it all started 7 weeks ago. For anyone that's not aware, on the 16th of September, a Kurdish Iranian woman by the name of Mahsa Jina Amini was arrested by the morality police. So this morality police are basically a police force that go around Iran, checking out women, what they're wearing. If it doesn't conform with the Islamic regime dress code, they are arrested and they're taken to a centre for re-education. In the case of Mahsa, she was wearing the hijab, but it wasn't to their liking. So she maybe had like a bit of hair out or whatever. She was visiting family in Tehran. They arrested her. They took her away. They beat her. She fell into a coma and she died. So basically she was murdered. Okay. So seeing as she's Kurdish, she is a minority. So from the get-go, we would assume that is why she was brutally attacked and murdered, because of such a silly little thing. She was still wearing the hijab. I guess I want to just drive that point home. The women in Iran try their best to kind of push the boundary with the hijab, so it's not abnormal that there's a woman that has a bit of hair out. Like, that is very, very commonplace. So anyway, the news broke. Obviously, there's a lot of censorship in Iran. You only get fed what the government wants you to hear. But a very brave journalist broke the news to the media, and it spread like wildfire. And it got everyone very, very pissed off. I mean, to the point where it was kind of like there was a fire already there, and this ignited it. It just blew up into a big volcano of sorts. And I guess from that point on, we saw this female-led revolution or protest, and now we're calling it a revolution because of the time span that it has, progressed for. And Tina, you can jump in here. It started in Kurdistan, and it just kind of went across all cities and provinces in Iran and across the world. There's a big Iranian diaspora, and we've all kind of jumped on board. So, every major city in the world has been protesting weekly, if not several times a week, with regards to this cause. And I guess, the thing about it being bubbling under the surface, the Iranian people have been repressed for 43 years under this Islamic regime. The Islamic regime came into power in the 1979 revolution. And the way they came into power was through loads of lies. The people who, supported the Ayatollah, which is the guy that, led that 1979 revolution, they were fed a bunch of lies. They were told that they would be stepping into a democracy under the rule of the Ayatollah, which is not what happened. Like, as soon as Ayatollah came in, within 2 years, he had just basically slashed all women's rights. Women are considered only half of what a man is in many respects. People liken it to being under a conservatorship. So basically, the women of Iran live under a constant conservatorship that's ruled by their fathers or their brothers or senior male figure. Not even senior. Brothers, could be younger brother. Even the younger brother can tell their sisters what to do, whatever. So women are treated really badly, minorities just as badly. And I'll hand that to Tina to talk more about, because she's got a lot more background of being Kurdish background. But the men as well aren't happy. Even though this is a female-led revolution, the men are fully behind the women, and they're walking side by side with this, wanting change, because men aren't empowered to, lead their own life. Nobody is, especially women, especially minorities, but men as well. I could talk on and on. I'll hand it to Tina.
That was a perfect summary. I think let's think about how this all started, right? It relates back to identity and how we represent ourselves. You would think that in 2022, at the very least, we all have the ability to choose how we present ourselves when we leave the house every day. And so because women and men, because men as well, they can't wear super short sleeve, they can't wear shorts. They also get coded with the morality police. If they can't leave the house in a way where they feel confident about how they look, how they present themselves, if every single element about their character and personality is under the surveillance of someone as scary as the morality police, you are starting to dull a whole society's sense of self. You are stripping away their ability to access any notion of individuality. You are silencing generations worth of really educated and capable and driven people. Because if from day one, when you're leaving the door, you're not confident within yourself, you're never going to be confident when it comes to playing any role within society. So I think once this news broke out about Gina, everyone was like, all right, we've had enough. This is now ridiculous. It's now or nothing. It's now or never. And, we have had protests. We've had uprisings in the last 10, 20 years. They've come and go. And we, even in Sydney, Australia, I myself, I used to sit on my dad's shoulders when I was a little kid and go protesting. From day one, we've always been protesting, but it dies out. It fizzled out. This time, not only did it not die out, we have parents who are committing to the cause, to this movement, so much so that they are mourning the loss of their children within graveyards. And while they're mourning them, instead of saying, oh no, I've lost my child, they're saying, thank you, my child, for fighting for this cause, and we will see a better day. This is how committed our people are to this movement. And this is international. Me, myself, Anna, everyone fighting in Sydney, Australia, in Canada, in Germany, all over the world, they have committed to being okay with the fact that their family is under even more, risk and danger. Because every time I go into the street, I'm representing my surname. I'm allowing for, those who are keeping a close eye on us from Iran to know who I am and to know where my family is. And yet we are all still committed. So I think understanding that this comes back to so many years of censorship, of self, of identity, of representation. If people understand that, they will then realize why so many people around the world, especially those in Iran that are fighting every single day for their lives, are this dedicated to this movement, which is now a revolution. It's definitely a revolution. You're not just protesting, you're accepting potential death. Every day you leave the house to go buy some bread. And I think when it comes to minority groups, I'll give you guys a little summary on that as well. Baha'is, for example, Baha'is, it's a religion that isn't accepted within Iran, and it's for various different reasons, political reasons as well. But basically, as an example, my mother, she wasn't allowed to study. She wasn't allowed to work. If whoever knew that she was Baha'i would treat her horribly. Even all the cemeteries, which a lot of the Baha'i families would visit and have relatives there. On multiple occasions, the government would go and dig up the bodies. This is how much they disrespect the Baha'is. And it was so bad that over the last 10, 15 years, people were accepted into various countries, France, we had Canada, Australia as refugees because of how badly Baha'is were treated. And that's how I came to Australia. Our house used to be, we would have theft and robbery in our house on a monthly basis. And it was just too unsafe. And when it comes to the Kurdish community, another minority, they are treated as inferior. They are treated as less than the everyday Iranian member of society. They are treated as uneducated individuals that do not have any geographical location or position. They don't have a representation. They are completely stripped away from everything. And so the most minimal amount of respect is not paid towards them within Iran. So I think that provides a good summary of the women, the Baha'is, and the Kurdish people of Iran.
And there are a bunch of other minority groups as well. There's a list.
The queer community, that's another big one. And even within Australia, we have so many individuals that are from the Iranian queer community. But to this day, because of 43 years of censorship and 43 years of having no rights to access any sense of individuality, even within Australia, they feel that they can't access that right. It's a trauma. It's a form of trauma that paralyzes people, which is such a shame.
How do you guys, like right now, obviously you've had 7 weeks to digest and process what's going on. Where do you guys sit with this personally? Because I'm so far removed from it, but this like causes me equal parts rage, passion, and sadness at the same time. And I'm nowhere near as like obviously involved in any way, shape, or form to the level that you guys are. So how do you both feel like right now, 7 weeks on?
Yeah, so when it first happened, you know, as Tina mentioned, there have been a few instances of uprisings, this being the biggest one. The last one was 2019. And, you know, they never last very long, you know, but this one has lasted the distance, you know, which is, you know, I mean, with any revolution, it's going to be bloody, which, you know, it is what it is. It's taken some time to be able to watch the content without breaking down. You know, there was a lot of that for a while, and you know, I struggle with my mental health. You know, prior to this, I mean, you know, I've had postnatal depression. I suffer from depression, anxiety, and so you know, these sorts of things are quite triggering for me. I have been to Iran myself a couple of times, once when I was 12 and again when I was 22. So, you know, I've seen society there and life in the through their lens. So I know what it's like. So yeah, it has hit really close to home. And I guess what I kind of thought to myself is, if I'm going to come out of this okay, I'm going to have to get involved with it as best as I can. So, you know, the first thing I did was checked online to see if there are any protests being organized, and I quickly found there was, and it was through the group that Tina was working with, Solidarity. They're based here in Sydney. They had already, you know, put together, you know, some programs and things. So I started attending those every week. There are other groups in Sydney as well that look to organise these sorts of events. So yeah, I was probably frequenting 2 to 3 times a week going to these, and it helped. It has helped a lot. It's been therapeutic, because otherwise I'd be at home weeping, and that's no good for my husband, my kid. You know, I've got a little boy, and it's just, yeah, I can go down a rabbit hole, and it can be really hard for me to come out of it. And the way I've been able to manage it personally is through activism, I suppose, like not to the extent of Tina by any means, but I'm doing what I can, you know. Like, you know, I wrote an open letter for Albanese, and, you know, willing him to speak up. You know, when I read the letter at one of our rallies, that was 3 weeks ago now, Albanese hadn't said a word about this uprising. And, you know, given every major politician, voice, celebrity, popular figure across the world had said something by that point of the 4-week mark, it was astonishing. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what, where are you? Like, where are you? You're meant to represent us. And, you know, I guess I always thought that Albanese was, you know, one of us. You know, I guess the way that he came across in his campaign was like, you know, I'm for the small guy, and, you know, I come from a humble background, and all of that really resonated with me. And to see that he wasn't saying anything kind of made me go, you know what, I'm going to try and make you say something, because I can. I'm an Australian citizen. You know, I voted for you. I have the right to write you a very pointed letter asking you to be our voice, but then to also go beyond that and sanction anyone connected to the Islamic regime, because unfortunately they still reside here in Australia through, the Islamic Republic consulate that's in Canberra. Obviously they live here, they bring their families here, and then also there are lots of I guess there's a lot of stories and documentation around other officials being able to just other officials from Iran being able to come here, live here, keep all of their assets here, like money laundering. Who knows what's going on? I don't have all of the documents. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an expert, but we know that this is a widespread problem across the globe, not just Australia. And it just felt kind of odd that Albanese wasn't speaking. It was like, why? Is there something going on? And we need to get you to speak. And if I can help to do that, I will. And we're going to keep doing it. He has said something now. I think it was at the 5-week or 6-week mark. He ended up saying it was pretty, didn't say much, to be honest, and still waiting for action. So that's what we're working towards now. Action from the Australian government.
Yeah, I mean, what does it mean to be an activist? I think it's just realizing that you need to inform yourself about what's going on around the world and wanting to stand for a change when it's required. Already you're an activist. So I think, just to add to what Anna was saying again, the response we've seen from our government is not acceptable. And straight up, it's disappointing. We have every right to have expectations of him. He is our leader. We have voted for him. We have supported him. And you don't have a female-led revolution, which is going over 7 weeks, during which multiple primary schools have been attacked and children under the age of 17 have been murdered, during which the biggest prison in Iran was set on fire and hundreds of people were murdered, during which people have caused a reform in the streets to the point where they are okay with being shut down just for removing a hijab. To have all of this going on and to say nothing up until a very pathetic interview a couple of weeks ago, and that interview itself, it was just a little comment at the end of his interview, which is, so what do you reckon is going on in Iran? I think that's even disrespectful of him to really not stand in solidarity with us, and especially when you compare it to other leaders around the world, France, Canada, America, Israel, what else? We've got New Zealand as well. With all of these countries, it's not just their foreign ministers, their leaders got up within the first few weeks and made statements and acted on those statements and placed sanctions, not only because they wanted to support their people who voted for them, but also because they wanted to be standing on the right side in history. What's going on right now in Iran affects everyone around the world. It is not limited to Iranians only. Why? Because it matters. Any misuse of human rights, any lack of human rights in one country is a lack of human rights for all. If anyone isn't okay with what's going on in Iran, they need to get up now and make a point out of it. Otherwise, they are choosing to support a circumstance which should not be, after maybe 200-300 years ago, we shouldn't ever have anyone breaking all the regulations surrounding human rights. And yet we have it, and it's front stage center for everyone under a spotlight, and yet to get nothing from our governments. And I say nothing with absolute confidence. is just ridiculous. I personally, I got a member of parliament, Jerome Laxale. Within the first week of this uprising, I was messaging and calling him every day because I've worked closely with him before within the NDIS sector. I helped him write a speech, which he presented in parliament. Within the second week, I got a council member to do a statement video with me. I got a few more politicians to come out to the protests. That was great and all. And it gave our people hope. It gave our people motivation to see, politicians coming up and supporting them. But what we're asking for right now goes beyond appearances and goes beyond videos and statements and I call on so-and-so. It's action. We require action. Why do we want to place sanctions on these ambassadors? Why are we okay with having ambassadors of such a brutal regime residing within Australia freely so that they can continue what they've been doing for the last 43 years? Why is our government okay with that?
Can I just add that the Islamic regime is a terrorist organization? They are the biggest exporter of terrorism in the world. And we have had for many years war on terror. Iran's the axis of evil, blah, blah, blah. Isn't this the prime opportunity to put them down, get rid of them? All these years, we've gone our governments in the West have gone on and on and on about how Iran is a terrorist country. Golden opportunity. So where are you,
I think the three of us could probably agree that the government's fucking spineless at absolute best, but it'd be nice to see some kind of change for sure. What do you guys feel is needed? Because I feel like a lot of people might feel helpless in some way here in Australia. What's needed and what can we do, knowing that the government are fucking pathetic? What can we do to make change, take charge, make noise?
Yes, so the biggest ask of the Iranian people is to be their voice. That's all they want. They want us to keep talking about it. They want us to keep circulating videos, images, anything, news, whatever's coming out of there. They want us to spread it. They want us to share it. They want us to post about it. They want us to keep the conversation going, because that is the number one thing the government, the Islamic regime, wants to not happen. They want to silence them. And they are doing a pretty good job of it with, cutting out the internet, killing them, whatever, creating little event, well, not little, they tend to create distractions from what's actually happening. So, like Tina had mentioned, the fire that was set in the largest prison of Iran, Evin, that was set by the Islamic regime. It wasn't by, the prisoners or whatever story they made up on the day. It was by them to distract from what was happening with regards to the revolution. And there's been a bunch of other things. They had a gunman walk into a mosque and, shoot a bunch of people on Friday prayers. Am I saying that right, Tina? That was just a few days ago, right? Again, the work of the regime. So, they're doing all of these things in the hopes of distracting from what's really happening, which is the people do not want them anymore. They want them to just fuck off, to put it simply. So the best we can do is keep talking about it, write to our MPs, hammer Albanese with a bunch of messages. You can, quickly send a email to him through his website, through a web form. It's super simple. If you'd like to attend a protest in your city, please, by all means, we'd love to have anyone and everyone attend these. They're not just for Iranians to go shouting about. We want everyone there. We want Australians. Well, I'm an Australian, but we want all Australians to be our voice. So, yeah. Tina?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. But also, guys, keep in mind, there is a reason why we've been able to not we've been able to. There's a reason why a brutal regime has been existent for 43 years and has gotten away with it. The amount of propaganda, the amount of false information released, the amount of dependencies the Iranian regime has. There is a reason why we're 7 weeks into a revolution and not many people know about it. Let's just say that. Right now is the time for myself, Anna, anyone that knows what's going on in Iran, now yourself, Blake, you now have a responsibility also. Now is the time for us to be sharing the correct information, what's actually going on. Because I understand, at the moment, not many people know. That's why our protests, which are great, they're amazing every week, but we're getting maximum 2, 3, maybe 5,000 people. We can do better. And I understand right now, not many people know about what's going on in Iran, and that's why not many people are attending. But this is why, at the very least, we need everyone to be sharing whatever information you see online, in person, just share the word. I got asked the other day, you know, we had like a rally on our motorbikes, and it was beautiful. It was great. We really had a sense of togetherness and community. And I had one of the members ask me, Tina, it's really great what you guys are doing, but how will these protests, how will these rallies help those in Iran? And I made a little example for him. I said, look, every time you recycle something, you are helping the globe's environment. In the same way, when you attend a protest, when you share correct information, you are adding positively to a global issue. It's a global crisis. We really need to understand that this isn't just relevant to Iranians. If we are okay with what's going on in Iran, we are committing ourselves to being okay with this form of governance for all. Why? Because every generation is getting closer and closer to a global world. Our borders, our boundaries, they're all fading away. We're migrating so much. There soon will be no such thing as a singular country. Everything is blending into one another. So for us to not do anything about a government like the Iranian regime existing, and for us to turn a blind eye towards it, like our government is doing at the moment in Australia, is us committing to a potential threat in our own future, in our kids' future, when it comes to human rights, when it comes to governance, when it comes to equality. We need to be on the right side of history today and make sure that we stand as a whole country, as a global country. We need to stand against these people together. This sense of unity really needs to be at its strongest place at the moment. And I think another concern that I know we all have with our Australian government is, why are we not getting the same response and support from our government as Ukraine is? I think I would love to ask Albo, myself, that question personally, because I have bumped into him. I've seen him face to face twice in the last 6-7 weeks because of my own connections. And I have bluntly asked him these questions, and I've just been turned away. So I think at the very least, we deserve an answer as to why aren't we getting, is it really a matter of race? Is this why we're not getting the same treatment or attention? Because that's what it looks like. Nothing else comes to mind, at least in my opinion.
What about money though?
Is it money? Is it race? Is it the threats of Iran and its strength? Is it trade? Is it Australia's trading relationship with Iran, which is pretty extensive? We need answers. If you're not going to do anything to support us, at least give us answers so we can figure out what we need to do to support ourselves. And also on that unity, you know, Iran, as like any other country, they have various different political parties. We have our lefties, we have our monarchs, we have are socialists. We have an extensive range as well. You know, you're talking about a country which dates back to one of the oldest empires. We have a vast we have a vast history and culture backing us up as to the way we think and act today. Just to manage these people in one setting is a task in itself. Imagine, you know, putting the oppositions within Australia together into one room and telling them, you guys got to work on this one thing together, and you've got to reach one common goal together, and you've got to do this ASAP right now, no time to manage all the conflict, you just got to get over it. That's what's going on right now. And who's managing it? Us, the kids, well, not kids, but we're also not trained professionally for this. I'm an architect, you know, like, this is where we need support from our government to help unify us, to help broadcast our voice as a unified collective.
When it comes to the government and even mainstream media, you guys can see it clearly. I've got my doubts about them as a general organisation. What do you see as the difference between what's been fed and you guys who are essentially on the ground in some way, shape or form with direct connection? What's the difference between reality and what small amount Australians are getting fed, just so they know the truth?
Yeah, I think that it's a watered down version of what's happening over there. You know, we're probably seeing maybe 10% at best of what's actually happening on the ground in Iran in the mainstream media here in Australia. And yeah, look, I mean, both Tina and I follow a whole range of different Iranian, you know, outlets that are based outside of Iran. That's the only way you can get true journalism out there. Coming out of Iran is journalists and organizations that are based outside of Iran. We follow all of these. We see a lot of the brutality. We see dead bodies. We see murders. We're seeing all of that. I personally, rape. I mean, yes, rape. Like, I mean, there's a whole host of, you know, just to put some perspective in here. It was only recently that I learned that when a minor, so a female under 18 or whatever, is arrested, and before they murder them, they rape them, because it's against, from their interpretation of the Quran, it's against the religion to murder a virgin girl.
Can I just add, the minor is 16, under the age of 16.
You're not going to hear about that in mainstream media, are you?
No, you're not.
And also we have a group called NIAC as well. So their job is to represent Iran and support Iran through propaganda, through media, through journalism. They are Iranian themselves, but because they support the regime, they put this mask on, and they live in all these countries around the world, and they make up these bullshit stories. It's pretty much bullshit. Just to make sure that people like us that are fighting for this movement don't get heard. So to add on top of the lack of information coming out of Iranian mainstream media, we're also battling these people that are spreading false information.
Yeah, and I guess a really important point to note, and you know, one of the many reasons why people of Iran are so fucking angry and over it and this regime and its bullshit, is that they themselves and their family members are often shipped off to the, you know, land of glory in the US, Canada, Australia, Germany, whatever, to live a normal, decent life, free of the hijab, free of all of those restrictions, with all of the money that they funneled out of Iran. All of the Iranians are left poor, living in poverty, with no hope, nothing, while they go out gallivanting, clubbing in the UK, doing whatever the fuck they want. What the fuck's that? If you want a regime of what you've built, you stay there and live in it. You have no right to be able to go out there and live freely, and then tell everyone else that's stuck back in Iran, get back in your fucking box and, you know, do as we say.
Absolutely. And Blake, just to give you an idea of how bad the economy is in Iran and the poverty situation, as a doctor, you're not able to afford meat, to eat meat. That's a common story you hear all the time. A doctor, you know, there's always, you'll find children begging on the street. Winter, you'll see them barely clothed, begging on the street. The poverty over there is just something else.
And I think that the recent, the currency over there is now at its all-time low against the US dollar. It's worth nothing.
Girls, we could talk about this for a long time, and I'd be part passionate and part probably raging more than I am right now, which again is nothing compared to what I'm sure you're experiencing and your community and those that are directly and indirectly involved. Where can people find some fucking honest information about what's going on, and where's the best spot for them to lend support, whether that's rallies, whether that's anything that is of help to the Iranian community?
Maybe we could put it just in your description of the podcast. We could throw a few links in there for good resources. And yeah, rallies are happening, as I mentioned earlier, across every city in Australia every week. Sydney's group is called Solidarity with Iran. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not actually across all of the other groups interstate, but again, we can put all of those links and things in the description.
We also have a few new media channels that have started up just because of this, and they're basically, we go throughout the protest and we interview people right there and then, so you guys can get updated information in English. One of them is called Iran Alternative Media. We could also give you guys a link for that. But honestly, if you just look up #Mahsa, there's so much there. Yeah. And that's all of us sharing stuff, you know, constantly. So if you want something now, if you want information right now, this moment, we're on Instagram, all of us, at least 8 hours a day. You might as well search up #Mahsa and see what comes up.
Beautiful. Thanks, girls. As I said to you guys before we came on, I definitely feel under kind of educated in terms of what's going on. And I know I'm not the only one. So to get some proper insight from you two is super helpful for people. And as we've said numerous times throughout the last kind of 50 minutes, not to trust the bullshit noise that they're hearing from government and mainstream media, and to actually get to the truth, which unfortunately is way too common a theme in so many countries when it comes to mainstream media and government. So appreciate you guys giving proper insight into actually what's going on.
Thank you, Blake.
Yes.